Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So we are continuing to go through the February 2021 edition of The Light, a truth paper. That's a free online paper available on our website. Link is in the description. So we're going to be covering 2 pages today of the paper because it's a double page spread. So I think this is, if I remember, this is page 10 and 11. And I think this will be episode 15 or 16, I'm not sure. Okay, so you can see the title of the article on the screen. So these are topics that the creators of The Light suggest as good topics for people who don't already know about these to look into for themselves, and it's about looking into them and making your own opinion as always. Some of these have been they definitely did exist, of course, and some of these have been proven to have been conspiracies that have been proven true. Other ones are still debatable. So we'll just quickly go through these, and yes, it's up to you to go and look at it yourself. So 1945 is the first one they mention, Operation Paperclip. The German scientists, technicians and engineers had made brilliant and groundbreaking advances in many fields in the lead up to and during the war, and the victors didn't have a moral problem with the Nazi weapons of destruction. The only problem was that the brilliant scientists were on the wrong side. The US got a sizable portion of these Nazi scientists, around 1,500, and smuggled them into NASA, the CIA and Hollywood, where some of them, such as Werner von Braun, went on to make a name for themselves. Thus, the US willingly allowed its military and intelligence agencies to be infected with Nazi ideology, which continues to this day. Okay, and then we have 1946, Operation Gladio. The 2-decade operation used CIA-created stay-behind networks as part of a strategy of tension that unleashed a multitude of terrorist attacks from the late 1960s to the early 1980s. The attacks were blamed on Marxists and other left-wing political opponents in order to discredit communism. The operation involved multiple bombings that killed hundreds of innocent people, including children. The most notable attack was the August 2, 1980 bombing of the Bologna train station, which killed 85 people. Okay, then we have 1953. Now, because this is a PDF of the paper, you can order this paper in the paper copy, which I do. It's Wayfair's printed it. Unfortunately, these two have been split, so I'm just going to read these from my paper copy. So 1953 is Operation Ajax. I'll zoom in so you can see some of the text there. So we're reading this one. So Operation Ajax. In 1953, the CIA launched Operation Ajax in order to overthrow Iran's democratically elected leader Mohammad Mossadegh and replace him with the Shah, a ruthless dictator. The United States sought to depose Iran's nationalized Anglo-Persian oil company and install 5 US oil companies to take over the nation's oil fields. In order to do so, they staged a false flag operation that utilized propaganda and complex political maneuvers in order to create a public revolt that eventually led to the United States and Britain's MI6 military intelligence reinstalling the Shah in order to throttle Iran's oil supplies and transform the nation into a puppet regime of the United States. Okay, and then we have 1954, which is the Lavon affair. Israel admits that an Israeli terrorist cell operating in Egypt planted bombs in several buildings, including US diplomatic facilities. then left behind evidence implicating 8 Arabs as the culprits. One of the bombs detonated prematurely, which caused one of the bombers to be captured. A public trial exposed the Israel spy ring and the covert operation. The operatives were convicted and 2 of them executed. Israeli Defense Minister Pinhas Lavon was forced to step down because of the scandal. However, the more far-reaching consequences of the Lavon affair demonstrate once again how governments use false flags to achieve certain objectives that might not have been possible otherwise. Okay, so now we're going back to the other page. 1955, Operation Mockingbird. Operation Mockingbird was a CIA project to infiltrate and covertly control the media. It began in the 1950s under then CIA Director Alan Dulles. The declassified files, most are classified as secret, but a tiny fraction here, show how the CIA infiltrated the mainstream media and had its pieces inserted into TV, newspapers and journals everywhere as news, when they were nothing more than lies and propaganda. Robert Salant, former president of CBS News, once said that our job is to give people not what they want, but what we decide they ought to have. Mockingbird was famously exposed in the 1975 Church Committee hearings. Nothing much has changed today. Journalists worldwide are still on the payroll, and some were brave enough to talk about it, such as the late Udo Ufkott. Okay, so then we go to 1956. Is this one? COINTELPRO. A program run by the FBI under Hoover, which started in 1956. COINTELPRO was a series of undercover operations that targeted people and groups the US government deemed were a problem, such as the Communist Party, other far-left groups, civil rights groups, far-right groups, for example the KKK, and individual activists such as Martin Luther King. The scope of COINTELPRO was broad. It involved monitoring, surveilling, infiltrating, discrediting, and disrupting. Although then Attorney General Robert Kennedy authorized some spying, the FBI was given an inch and took a mile, much like today's spy agencies, clearly overstepping the bounds of legality. It became a way for the government to intimidate and stifle dissidents. Okay, next one is 1962. Operation Northwoods. The 1962 declassified US Joint Chiefs of Staff memo was entitled Operation Northwoods, Justification for US Military Intervention in Cuba. In its own words, the document states that a series of well-coordinated incidents will be planned to take place in and around Guantanamo to give genuine appearance of being done by hostile Cuban forces. Luckily, JFK had the wisdom to reject the plan. By 1962, he had discerned the insidious influence of the military intelligence complex upon his presidency. Then 1964. Gulf of Tonkin, the most notorious declassified false flag in American history. It resulted in the deaths of millions of people. Declassified documents reveal the North Vietnamese did not attack the United States on August 4, 1964. In fact, the CIA, through its South Vietnamese proxy, invaded North Vietnam, and the standoff in the Gulf of Tonkin was a result of those illegal covert raids conducted under O-Plan 34A. President Lyndon Johnson's Secretary of State, Robert McNamara, lied to a joint session of the Senate Foreign Relations and Armed Services Committees about the role played by the Navy in the Phantom attacks. Declassified documents also reveal a number of senators knew the incident in the Gulf of Tonkin was a false flag. Next one is this one. I'll read this from my paper. Okay, this very famous date. In Britain, we would say 11/9, by the way. The false flag which dominates the modern era, without getting bogged down in the purposely convoluted complexity and many plots and subplots, the results of this operation are clear: the invasion and destruction of Iraq, despite no evidence at all of any connection, and the heightened security and removal of civil liberties domestically that followed and under which we now all live every day. Those who still believe the official story despite the facts, litany of media spin and government cover-ups have simply not watched James Corbett's 9/11 A Conspiracy Theory. So then we're going to another one in 2001. Anthrax attacks. Although the FBI now admits that the 2001 anthrax attacks were carried out by one or more US government scientists, a senior FBI official says that the FBI was actually told to blame the anthrax attacks on Al-Qaeda by White House officials. Remember what the anthrax letters looked like. Government officials also confirmed that the White House tried to link the anthrax to Iraq to support the false 11 of 9 justification for regime change in that country. In 2013, Syria chemical attacks. In 2013, to try and justify launching bombing attacks in support of the rebel alliance fighting with al-Nusra and al-Qaeda against President Assad of Syria, the media, and especially the BBC, faked a hospital supposedly receiving children with injuries from gas attacks. Videos exposing the hoax circulated widely on the internet, and a massive public backlash resulted in Prime Minister David Cameron's being defeated in the House of Commons when asking for airstrikes on August 29th. The regime waited a year and did it anyway via supporting US strikes supposedly on terrorists in Iraq and Syria. Russian military involvement saved Syria on that occasion. 2020, Lockstep, Operation Lockstep. The insane response of governments to the as yet to be wholly isolated from an infected person pathogen is responsible for yet further massive loss of liberties and the ability to work and provide for one's family across the world. The latest in a long line of establishment scams, deceptions and terror perpetrated on an unsuspecting public through the power of the media machine and the lockstepping of all world governments. Okay. So, some interesting things there. If you find them interesting, look them up. Read what's available on them. Make up your own mind where it still needs to be made up. And have fun. And until next time, take care, look after yourself, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.